Can I first of all begin by really thanking Norton Rose, Patchwork, Mosaic, and of course Community Foundations for organizing such an inspiring evening. As David Sheepshanks said, coming together and get such a variety of people together has indeed made this a very interesting evening, and we've touched so many different subjects, to entrepreneurs, to politics, to giving, and you name it, it's been here. And it's been an extremely inspiring evening to be here. Now, as you heard, I am the honorary president of the UK Community Foundations, but I want to tell you a little bit about how I became involved, because it's a pity that Vince is not here to listen to this, because I was surprised he said he would like to hear a bit. He will want to hear a little bit more about community foundations, and we're going to follow that up. It was in 1986 when the Mellon Foundation came to the UK and thought of the idea that community foundations should be set up in the UK. And I was then the director of the National Council for Voluntary Organisations, which is a kind of an umbrella body for voluntary organisations in England and Wales. And so therefore had a little hand in the establishment of the very first community foundation, which was started in Bristol, called the Bristol Quartet. And we were delighted that it kind of has grown the way it has. And then in 2003, I can't quite remember, Stephen Hammersley, who is the chief executive and the then chairman, came to me and said, will you become involved as the vice president? And when I looked at it, I was absolutely awestruck at how this movement had actually grown. Of course, when the change happened, I became president some years ago. And I can't tell you how proud I am to be the president of the community foundations. I call it a movement, and I call it a movement because I want to tell you something about the philosophy that underpins how community foundations work. Because from David, you heard the work we do, the number of foundations we've got. I think it's the philosophy that underpins it that inspires me. They are a vehicle for giving, and it's in organizations. They're organizations which actually connect givers and doers. And as David said, you can either set an endowment, or you can channel money through that, or become engaged. And what I like about them, they're about local giving. And through local giving and through local engagement, you create a social capital. And I think that's very important. Because when we talk about the voluntary sector, even when I was NCVO, people talk about it as a means of doing. Of course, they are a means of helping people. But to me, voluntary organizations are also a basis through which, what Vince was talking about, creating trust, ethics, and values. Because to me, it's the engagement. They are a learning place of how you get engaged, how you become involved. And therefore, it's not just the doing of it, but to me, how voluntary organizations are actually organized, their governance. Through that engagement, we learn about democracy, we learn about values, we learn about creating trust. And I think that part of voluntary sector is actually underplayed, because I feel in our society today, we have become rather disengaged. We have what I call representative democracy. You vote every 5 years, then you sit back. And we don't necessarily take responsibility, because I think this is about participation and engagement. And it's that philosophy of community foundations, what they do locally, is very, very exciting for me. And that's why I feel very passionately about that. And it's about local engagement, local giving. And the thing is, community foundations can give money to small bodies, large bodies. But over the years, because of their experience, they've been very innovative. Because in terms of looking at different ways people can give and how they can actually get engaged, like Community First, where you're working with government to actually inspire people to give. But one thing I will say, while I know that the minority communities really give, and as Vince said, in the Muslim community, there's some inspirational giving. But I have to say, as president, I would like to see more local engagement for minority communities through community foundations. And it's not just about giving, it's about engagement with your communities. And I think that's the aspect of it which I really, really want to leave with you, because we can talk about them, but I think community foundations, and in this room, you have Stephen Hammersley, who is the Chief Executive of Community Foundation UK, and you've got a whole range of Chief Executives. And let me tell you, every time I go to the annual yearly meetings of community foundations, I come back so enthused, because the dynamism and the glow on the people who actually work with them. And that tells me something about how much people gain by giving, is that involvement and by giving. And it's that which I think sustains people. And one of my favorite sayings is that you work to make a living, but you give to make a life. And when you hear inspirational stories about individuals who've actually given and how it's changed their lives, it's actually phenomenal. And I think that's part of it's a glue in our community. It's about cohesiveness, it's about inclusiveness, it's about engagement. And that's why I think community foundations are absolutely essential. And I really, really would like to see a lot more involvement and engagement from minority communities through that. I know you give very generously, but it's that involvement locally that's very important and part of cohesiveness and inclusiveness.